without further ado, I'd like to welcome you to the Women in Career Transition, the WICT DC Baltimore Chapter event for today. And I'd like to kick us off by introducing our speakers. First, I'd like to introduce Jason Levin. He is a speaker, trainer, career, business development, and outplacement coach. And he's also the founder of Ready, Set, Launch. Jason actually founded Ready, Set, Launch after a career in brand management at Unilever and consulting at Accenture and doing employer branding at Vault.com. Career, business development, and outplacement coaching are his passions, and Jason can work with you to execute an actionable plan so you can take clear steps towards a promotion, a career change, or transition into retirement. Next up, we have Lynn Romano from Charter Communications. She's our lead recruiter. And Lynn says that recruiting is her second career, and it happened accidentally. Really great story behind that. She started as an agency recruiter first, and then transitioned to corporate recruiting. So today, she has been at Spectrum for 15 years. As she relocated to the DC area from New York with her twin babies, who, as of May, graduated from college. So there's some time frame for you. And next up, we have Renee Hauch. She's the EVP of Search and Management and Research at CarlsenResources, Inc. Renee has dedicated the last 25 years to recruiting executives within media and telecommunications industries. She never thought she'd be able to combine her love of TV with her passion of developing close personal relationships with clients and candidates and helping them to make those critical decisions about their companies and careers. But she did it, and she found her dream job. Next up, we've got Sara Conde. She is the Program Director and Executive Advisory Services at MBO Partners. And she also is the founder and owner of Sara Caso Conde LLC, her really, really big side hustle. And Sara has over 15 years of experience in developing, selling, and optimizing programs designed for both sides of the contingent labor equation. So she works with Fortune 500 companies and independent talent. In her current role as Program Director of Executive Advisory Services at MBO Partners, she heads MBO's consulting service for top independent and professionals. Sara is responsible for advising seasoned professionals through transitioning, optimizing, and scaling their own independent business ventures so they can maximize the value of their expertise. And last, but certainly not least, we've got Vonya Alleyne from VP. She's the VP of People Solutions at Cox Communications. Vonya has been Vice President at Cox since 2013. She leads a very talented and innovative team of HR professionals who support the Virginia region with employee labor relations, talent, performance management, safety, risk, and employee lifecycle initiatives. She's also a recipient of our Listen Award for the 2019 WICT DC Baltimore Chapter Touchstones of Leadership Awards. Woo! So as you can tell, Vonya is very involved in WICT and NAMIC here locally. She's actually the founding and immediate past president of NAMIC Virginia, which I personally know they have made huge inroads into becoming one of the largest chapters for NAMIC. And she's also volunteers with a number of community-based events and organizations across the board in the region. And Vonya as well resides in Virginia Beach. She has two daughters, Royal and Jordan. So thank you, Vonya, for being here, and thank you for being a really good, strong advocate of WICT. Actually, all of you are, so we thank you for that. So without further ado, let's jump right in. So we've got a polling question for everyone today. Because we want to get an idea of where you are in your journey. So we're going to kick off the session by talking a little bit more about creating a strategy around your search. And if you all can just take a minute, let us know where you are right now in this journey. And I'll leave this up here for a few minutes. But it's interesting. The numbers are changing because some are just getting started, a lot thinking about a backup plan. We like that. Our WICT members are always planning. always ready for whatever can come down the road. All right, everybody, I think we may have some good results to share here. So one more second. All right, no more takers. So here we go. This is pretty amazing, actually. We have 65% of you that are actually in a planning, kind of keeping your options open mindset, which is fantastic. Because I think we all have that feeling of always wanting to be planning and sort of preparing for what comes next. So thinking about what comes next, if you have to go to that next moment of how do you prepare, who do you really ask for help? Is it time to really pivot, reimagine kind of a new path? How do you get there? So Jason, I'm going to throw this one over to you because we had a really good conversation about how you look at mapping all of this out and thinking about the journey, if you will.
Yeah. Monica, sorry, did you want me to do a quick overview of the trends, or you didn't want me to do that?
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I didn't know if you wanted me to do that. It's fine if you want to jump into this, but it's up to you.
No, I think it's good. I totally missed, that's my bad.
That's okay, I didn't want
to. I'm so excited to get into it, but no, I think this will be important because Renee is going to give us a little bit of a highlight around what's happening in the industry and some trends around the workforce overall.
I'll make it quick. I'll make it quick so we can get into that. So no, I think, as everybody, we're all in this uncharted territory right now. I don't think any of us ever expected to be sort of working in this pandemic. And I think it's probably the biggest reinvention of work any of us will ever see. So, it's something where even though COVID, the impacts on the job market overall have been harshly felt, I think there's a lot of positives coming from this. I think it's really given companies the opportunity to sort of be more flexible and create a lot of innovation. And so just to give some of the quick lessons we've seen, I think a lot of businesses, which I'm sure you're all dealing with now too, have realized that we can all work remotely, and it's worked. I think a lot of people were worried about it in the past, and we had clients a lot that would say we don't want someone that's going to come on board if they're not in this physical location because they didn't think they'd be productive and didn't think working from home would work. And I think so many people have seen that productivity has increased. So I think it's something where people are definitely much more open to looking at that. And I think communication is even stronger because even though we don't have the kind of brainstorming down the hall and working with, kind of seeing people in meetings, we're able to do it like we're doing now on Zoom and on Google. And so that communication, happy hours and all that too, I think people are communicating even more. But I think there have been some trends that we saw pre-COVID as well, with cord cutting and more of advertisers putting money into digital and really sort of the push to direct to consumer. And I think some of the other trends, the content creators, the subscription video on demand, the SVODs, have really had to step it up and have some more original content, because as consumers, everyone has that money, and how much money are they going to spend on something if it doesn't feel valuable? And I think we saw that with Quibi. That happened recently. They didn't convert as many subscribers, free subscribers, to paid as they kind of thought. But we're seeing a lot of opportunities in that sort of direct to consumer, in the SVOD space. I think gaming is another big area, animation, and a lot with podcasting. Audible and Spotify have tons of positions. And I think too, if you saw Sirius recently acquired Stitcher, I think there's a lot of stuff happening there as well. So there's, I really feel overall it's a much more positive job market than people really thought, because companies are saying, what are we going to do right now? How are we going to restaff? And what's important to us? And even if they're companies that we are working with and hiring freezes, they're still asking us to build a bench, a pipeline for the future. They want to have people ready so that when the time comes to hire, they've got a good pipeline of candidates. So, we're seeing people replace positions, but a lot of new roles too. So I think that it's still really, really positive. And I think that I think the roles are just going to be different. We might not see, like, marketing positions have sort of changed a little bit, that they've always kind of had some sort of a sales component, but we've seen a lot of that sort of the revenue generating roles too. So I think there's still great roles out there, but I think there's a lot of new roles that are going to be coming too, that are going to kind of be those hybrid roles that are going to help people in this new market.
Perfect. Thank you, Renee. That's super helpful and certainly insightful in terms of like where we're headed. But that, you know, as I was saying before, I was like, so how do we prepare? How do we get everything assembled? How do we, you know, think about, you know, how do we go and find those jobs that are out there right now? So Jason, we didn't mean to cut you off, but like you had that really good overview that we talked about before of just how do you get your mind wrapped around everything that's happening and where you might want to take your journey.
Thanks, Monica. It's real great to be here on this panel. Renee, thank you for kicking things off. Super excited to be here. Often when I'm working with folks, there's really a three-pronged approach that I think people can take in just starting to the where do I begin, right? The first piece is looking at your resume. And in looking at your resume, there's really two categories: things that you're good at that bring you energy, and things that you're good at that tire you and fatigue you. The things that you're good at that tire you and fatigue you are called weaknesses. The things that you're good at that bring you energy are your strengths. So how do you bring more strengths into your next opportunity? And as you're thinking over the last 10 years, 20 years, if I could carry these things into my next role, what would that be? The second piece is develop out lists. And there's really two lists that you need to be thinking about. One is, who are the 10 or 20 people that you are, who are your fan club? Who are your ambassadors? People that trust you, know you, can refer you. Share the second list, which is, what are the places that you're considering right now? What are the places that you are thinking about in terms of your own next step? And so really what a real structured, intentional job search is about is taking a list of potential employers that you think are interesting and sharing that with people that you already know. And then track it. So open up an Excel file, a Word file, a notebook, whatever that looks like, and make sure that you are writing these things down so that you have a place, a central file, to be able to think about a transition. And what you're articulating to others is, here are the things that I've done in my career that I enjoy. Here's how I would like to use that in the future. What do you think? And voila, you've started a job search.
That's perfect. No, that's such great advice. And Lynn, I think you also had talked the importance of really trying to, at this time, trying to figure out the companies that are hiring and not hiring. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Absolutely. So, you know, kind of to go off of what Renee was saying, and I could also tie in some things that Jason talked about as far as what Renee was saying and look, the trends that are out there and what companies are hiring. You know, typically when you're doing a job search, you think about your dream companies, and maybe now is a time to reimagine that and really first look at what companies are hiring, what industries are hiring. Anything these days, it seems like, can be done virtually, and many companies are embracing that. So taking a look at, there's so many online resources, whether it's tech industry websites and different places that are showing you trends. There's so many different tools out there. Glassdoor is a great one that is showing trends of companies that are hiring and industries that are hiring. And you can really take a look there. First, see who's hiring in general, then see who's hiring in areas that you have expertise, and then go to that network.
Yeah, I noticed recently, even like LinkedIn has, you know, the companies that are hiring. I feel like it's either a post or something that they do like on a weekly basis. They start off Mondays by just showing you, here are the companies that are hiring. So lots of those tools have been developed. Vonya, I know you had some insights too around, you know, despite a lot of things changing, we're moving to a virtual environment. What's happening with the norms? Like what should we be thinking about when we think about sort of the norms around job searches and all of that?
Yeah, thank you. And glad to be here with everyone. So my perspective is, you know, take advantage of what you already have access to. So when I was talking about norms, I was thinking about the accessibility we have to information, to people, to organizations with our connections through WICT, for example, if you want to get a good idea of what's going on within the industry or with other companies, utilize this platform, utilize WICT, NAMIC, and all the other industry associations to reach out, connect, ask questions, even if it's just doing it for research purposes, just so you kind of have an awareness or an understanding of what trajectories companies are moving towards, or what they're kind of moving away from. It better positions you so that when you have this information and you find opportunities that really kind of marry up to what you're seeking, you already have some background information in your arsenal, because you've done the prep, you've done the homework, you've done the research to position you accordingly. So I would say take advantage of what you have access to. And then the other thing is be really intentional. I tell folks who ask me, what should I do for my career? If I'm thinking about changing jobs, be very intentional with what you're looking for, with the questions that you're asking. And the reason why I say that is the more specific you are, the higher the likelihood you're going to get information that is germane to helping you, as opposed to getting kind of a broad spectrum of information which may or may not help you. So take that time to be very intentional and specific with the information that you're seeking to better position you.
So Renee, coming from the world of executive search, I know a lot of people tend to think, oh, it's an agency, I want to go use an agency. But tell us a little bit more about the role that agencies can play, and when is it the appropriate time to really think about looking at agencies?
Well, I think a couple of things. I think any time is a good time to look, because I think it's something where anytime you're doing a job search, it takes so much longer than you ever think. And there are so many people that I have stayed in touch with for the 25 plus years that I've been doing search that have never really been looking for a job, but they always stay in touch and we talk about what they're doing. So I think it's important to really just start talking to people whenever you want. I mean, I think it's important to lay that foundation, because the biggest thing people see, searches are happening quicker and faster. And if you're too late, because I always tell people, assume that everybody thinks you're not looking for a job. Assume that everyone thinks you're happy and no one's ever going to reach out to you. So I say you have to kind of go that way and tell people, even if you're employed, this is what I'm doing, this is what I'm looking for, keep me in mind for anything that's out there. And I think it's important to engage with me, but also with folks like Vonya and Lynn, because as we're staying very, very busy, but we've also seen a huge rise in really strong internal recruiting groups within companies. So I think, you have to talk to external companies like Carlsen and our competitors, but it's also really important to connect with, Lynn and Vonya, because you want to be on people's radar. You want to be there so that when a job comes, you're top of mind and you don't miss out on that opportunity.
Perfect. So I know we've also, we think about pivots, and a lot of people come to this point of sort of preparing for the journey. Tell us a little bit, Sara, about if someone is looking at consulting as a possible next step in this journey, give us a little bit of insight of what it takes, how do you get there, things to think about as you think about consulting as an alternative.
Hi, everyone. Nice to be here. So I'm going to be very clear to say everyone should be thinking about consulting. Everybody. We have a lot of data. The MBO has been running data. It's the longest of its kind. It's called the State of Independence. And before COVID even hit, the trend is so clearly going towards people going in and out of different work arrangements. So you want to think about diversifying your career portfolio and being able to engage with people who are going to hire you, and the way that they engage you may vary, right? Between being paid as an employee or freelancer or independent consulting or running your own practice. So I am an example of this. I'm a full-time employee at MBO Partners. And then I also have an LLC on the side. And I have that so that I'm always ready to maybe have a speaking opportunity or build my brand or talk about how I can, be just out there and promote myself. And there are things I do under an MBO voice that are appropriate, and there's things I do under my own voice. And that's really helped. Before COVID hit, what we were seeing with the State of Independence, 4 out of 5 people were freelancing by choice already of the people that they interviewed. And of those people, 1 in 5, 20% were making over $100,000. So I think it's not hard to set it up. It's not hard to slap together a website on, you know, on one of those tools and create an LLC. That's not hard. What's hard is going out and selling yourself, right? And working at it and not thinking, I'm just going to have a windfall of opportunities because I have a lot of experience. So just playing on what other people are saying. It's really truly the same whether you're looking for a career as an independent or as a full-time. And I actually think that mindset will be changing. I think people will be looking for projects, and the work arrangement's going to become second in many cases. You know, and we saw what we've been seeing industry-wise immediately is, you know, consultants, freelancers, first to go when things like this happen. They're also the first to come back, particularly if you're an executive and you're running, you know, you have a high net worth that you have to bring on. For those, and you know, like Vonya and Renee and Lynn and others, a lot of times companies are going to look at that and say, boy, I'd rather have a line item for project-based work, try before I buy a little bit before I'm going to commit to a full-time headcount. Whether it's an executive or even someone who does graphic design or does project management. Companies right now, with all the uncertainty, you know, this is becoming something that gives them flexibility too. So use that to your advantage to have an edge. So that's kind of the way I would see it, but it's really hard, and it's all still based on relationships and being very intentional, very specific. There's no sexy answer in terms of like how to get projects or how to get jobs. It's hustle, it's connections, it's networks, it's affiliations, and it's work. Same for, doesn't matter. But so that's kind of the trends that we're seeing. You know, there's lots of marketplaces out there, lots of different ways you can try to connect with jobs. Those are good. MBO has one, Deloitte has one. There's all kinds of ways of platforms that you may have heard about. Try them, you know, get involved, but it's still a numbers game, and still you should spread cast your net wide. Talk to recruiters, get in marketplaces. Again, diversify, get a coach, do all of those things, and still go out and hustle and make relationships and respect your recruiter and your partners and follow protocol, because people always like to help other people that they like. So being kind, compassionate, empathetic, still also, again, same stuff still is important.
All good ideas and advice. Certainly, Sara, I'm like, people do hire people that they like at the end of the day, right? Yep. So, and what's interesting is that you talked about the diversification of how people have to think about allocating, you know, through the new talent cloud providers, the human platforms, and sort of diversifying your reach. So on that, I think it's also important to think about, there's a lot that you have to think about as you're preparing for your job search. So we talked about a lot of things in terms of preparing, but I think the one thing that people often sort of come back to is like, but where should I really spend my time? And we spent a lot of time with this group kind of talking about the resume, the god-awful resume, but we have to do it.
It's a necessary evil, isn't it?
It is a necessary evil. But Jason, I think you talked about, I thought it was the funniest term, the ugly resume. Can you share with others like what your thoughts are on the resume and the importance of it?
Well, most resumes are ugly. I mean, I see tons of resumes, and you know, I see people get hired. I'm like, you got hired with this? And I have yet to find somebody that's like, oh my God, I love my resume. So the reality is that average resumes always get beaten out by better relationships. But when I think about the resume itself, there's a couple of things I think about. So one, I lived in France for 5 years. The word resume in French means summary. So the resume means summary. And what do I see? The antithesis, a laundry list. Let me tell you everything I ever did with the hope that you figure out the brilliance that I have, right? And then the second piece that I think about in terms of a resume is delta, change. What changed because you were in the role. And voila, you have a resume. It's summarized change. And so I was talking about earlier about what is it that you want to do? Where is it that you want to go? You begin with that, and then you focus on the summarized accomplishments of where it is that you want to go. And that's your resume.
I really like how you said that. Sorry, Monica. I really like that how you said, you know, I've worked with and tracked stuff in our marketplace. When I was working on that project, we were looking at tools. How can we help people write better resumes? And I shopped a service, right, that had a beautiful website. Everything looked so slick. And I gave them my resume, and they were tracking it for ATS systems, right, for the computer to pick it up. And everybody thinks, I thought that that was how you were supposed to do it until we talked. Like, I'm here as a learner too. And when you said that, write your resume to a person, not to a computer, I was like, oh, I hadn't really thought about that, because all the narrative, it's kind of like that myth buster, like, right? That's one of the things that is a myth out there, that you should write it for a computer to scan it to put you up on the top of the queue. And you should really write to a person, and the chances that could happen, but statistically the chances of that happening are so low. You're much better off writing it to a person. And that's what you told me, and I learned that and wrote that down. And I love the Delta piece. It's kind of like the so what. I work with a lot of executives in transition, and they have very impressive backgrounds, Fortune 100 companies. They're very great, but it's like, at the end of the day, it's all about the so what. I was here. I was that. Okay, make it easy for your recruiters to represent you. What are you going to bring to the business? What's the pull through on that? How did you impact by numbers and data and something other than, you know, your opinion of yourself? How did you make a change, right? And anything that we can point to data, because remember, a recruiter or anyone who's positioning you, an agent, a friend, they're putting their reputation on the line to sell you. So you got to make it easy for people and not have them sift through things. And it's not taboo to talk about what you did well, right? Make it easy for people to understand that. And it's not conceited or anything like that. It's what people need to get to the point.
And Vonya, I know that you had also talked about the importance of storytelling, because both you and Lynn are seeing the opposite viewpoint of all of these things coming in through your pipeline, all the candidates. And so tell us a little bit about that importance of storytelling, and how, you know, as a leader, a talent leader, you have to sort of sift through a lot.
Yeah, thank you. So Jason and Sara really hit on it. It's really storytelling through numbers and impact. At the end of the day, if you talk to a recruiter, they spend, if you're lucky, maybe a couple of minutes looking at resumes, maybe. And so in a couple of minutes that you have your eyeballs on that.
Seconds now.
Seconds, right.
Yeah.
I need to be able to see the impact that this person has brought to their position, to their organization, to their team, if they're leaders, and I need to see it easily. I'm not going to look through, you know, these fabulous kind of grandiose words. I need to see the impact, and I need to see it quickly. And I think the other thing that for me is number one taboo, ugly resume 101. Do not give me a job description. If you give me a job description, I promise you that resume is not going to be reviewed or evaluated. The way that companies are moving now, the way technology changes, the way our industry is continuously evolving, things are moving very, very fast. We want to see individuals who can bring impact quickly to the organization, hit the ground running, and take that organization or the position that they're in to the next level.
And Lynn, I mean, I know your teams have been deluged in some cases for some jobs with tons of resumes, and others maybe not so much, but what are some of the things you've been seeing too?
Absolutely, to just continue in that same mindset of what Jason and Sara and Vonya have said, it's that precise and telling a story. So one of the things that I look at as a recruiter is what, including that data and making the things you have done qualitative and quantitative, so a recruiter knows, not just like a bullet point that's so vague or using cliches, right? It has to tell a story and be able to, you have to imagine, are you answering the next question the recruiter is going to ask who looks at your resume? So you want it to spark, you want your resume to have enough detail to spark interest and spark a discussion during an actual conversation. You want them to want to call you. So you have to answer questions. Like when you're actually writing your resume and you read it out loud, I definitely always tell people, read your resume out loud or read it to someone else. And what questions does that person you're reading it to have about your background? Whether it's a friend, a colleague, or your spouse or significant other, or one of your kids, you know, how do you tell enough information about yourself to spark interest? You know, I have, for an example right now, I may have a pretty unique director of engineering role that I've only gotten 25 applicants, and then I've had a project manager role with over 200 applicants that I have to shut off the posting because that's a lot for me to look through and sift through and who is going to stand out. So it's really telling the story, answering questions, being, showing that delta and being quantitative and qualitative.
Does the way that's social, do you find, like if you have, because I tell my customers, at least when they're independent, you're not going to get leads from like a website, for example. However, it's a polished landing destination for your network to understand quickly about you. Do you find that, and I'm sure it varies, but I've told people, hey, you know, make sure your email, it's nice if you can have an email that's, you know, not a Gmail address, right? If you can, like mine is Sara@SaraCasoConde.com, and I made my website for that. And I have, if there's content published on LinkedIn or in social, if there's any thought leadership, is that something like, how do we make that easy for you guys to understand? We just put the link to the website to LinkedIn. Is that something you guys care about, or does it vary? I'm curious to hear from you.
Renee, I think that you might have some really good insights on that, given that too, I mean, you're doing a lot of like mid-level and then also executive level. What are some of the things that you've seen out there, even with like LinkedIn? I mean, what do you need to really think about for your brand presence? Do we use video nowadays? You know, there's so many different platforms and things that we're sort of evoking. What have you seen out there?
And just a real quick note on Sarah's thing about the email. You would not believe how many people still have, like, we had one person's email was hotgirl@gmail or soccer. And I'm like, to tell people, you can't have that as an email. Like, I don't care, do a work email, like, you know, but you still would be amazed at people that do that. So that's a big no, you know, on that. So, but yeah, the LinkedIn profile, you know, it's really important, I think, because I think more people are searching on LinkedIn really than the resume. I mean, I think the resume is important because it obviously tells your story, but LinkedIn, I mean, when we do a search, we go to LinkedIn before, I mean, obviously we go to people we know and we have a whole strategy, but LinkedIn is a huge part of how we do business. And I will say that so many times I present my slate of candidates, there's a new person we've never talked to or have lost track with that we found on LinkedIn. So I think it's so important to have the right, some people have like nothing, like they'll have their company, and my LinkedIn's not great, so don't use me as an example, but you know, so many people will just have the company and nothing there. Some will have way too much. So I think it's similar to what Vonya and Lynn and everyone have been talking about. You want to have, you know, not the exact thing as your resume, but enough data there that's going to grab you and going to, because we use something called Recruiter on LinkedIn, and we can really, and I'm sure you guys, we can really search. So if I'm doing like a scripted drama search, I can search scripted, drama, geographic, you know, so many details. And if you don't have that on your profile, it's not going to come up. So, you know, I think it's important to have a strong profile. I haven't seen as much video. I know Lynn can talk about some video interview stories, but we haven't seen as much of the kind of video resumes. It's just, I think that might be something a little more in some of those really tech savvy creative roles. But for us, it's really been more about that presence and strong websites for people that have, you know, portfolios, whether it's content or marketing, and they want to send us links to their work. That's really good, because when you see someone's work and they've got good videos, I think that's something that's really important too, to have a good portfolio online as well.
Great.
Can I add something to Renee's?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So one of the things that I think is important, and Renee alluded to it with the email addresses and having appropriate email addresses. I think one correlation that some, particularly maybe those early in a career, may underestimate, your electronic footprint ties to your brand image. So while you may have an outstanding resume or an outstanding LinkedIn profile, if a recruiter or an organization were to go to other social media platforms and search you and find some pictures that, you know, may be suggestive, provocative, whatever you want to call it, or some posts that may go against the cultural values of the organization that they're working for, just know that there are boundaries. And while we all have, you know, our freedoms to post and express ourselves how we deem fit, just understand that there could be repercussions for your electronic footprint as it relates to your brand management and as it relates to your ability to obtain that dream job with the dream organization that you're seeking. So it's just a word of caution, not saying, you know, do or don't do. I'm not policing anyone, but it is something that I want to make sure that folks are mindful of. Electronic footprint has a direct impact on brand image.
And real quick on that, I will say I had a client, it wasn't through us, it was a different candidate, but they actually pulled an offer from somebody because they found a picture of them smoking marijuana out of a menorah. And they were just like, who would do, you know, it was something, yeah, I know. I mean, and they were just like, it was just something that they just thought, you know what, if you're going to do something like that, but you have that footprint, and it was a great job and he lost it. But there are companies that scrub will go and find it. And I don't care if you think you delete it, they will find anything. And I tell my kids that too. And it's a really good point, Vonya, because we check it. We check for articles, we check for we do all of that because, and we have a background check company too, but we do it as well because we don't want surprises like that.
Yes, your digital footprint follows you wherever you go. So on the flip side, how about networking and doing it in a virtual environment where you're just having conversations and nothing is recorded? So, but taking it seriously, networking, how do you do it at a time like this? I mean, we don't have in-person events anymore. Everything is so virtual. You know, how do we keep connected to those really strong relationships that might be able to land us that next opportunity? And I know Jason and Sara, you both have had ideas. You guys talked a lot about networking and how to keep yourselves, you know, relevant. Either one of you, give us a few pointers, would you?
Sure, Jason. You know what I'm doing. I'll do. What I'm seeing is find the one beautiful thing now is it's easy to find like-minded individuals, other people who are going through the same challenges, mentors, associations, and everyone's adapting, everyone's going through a challenge. So I think there's a lot of opportunity now for events like this, and to be part of an association. Find your tribe. It's out there. I'm telling you it is. And you can find people that really want to make an impact and mentor. So that's one. And then if you want to get really tactical, you know, sometimes I really enjoy using Slack. And I have special Slack groups because you can make a workspace for just about anything. And then it's not on other platforms. It's just for you and whoever you want to work with. Like one with my mentors that I do. And I also think that having, and this is something that, you know, this is me as Sara speaking, this is my personal opinion. I also think that right now it's important to have someone who is objective that you can talk to, that is not going to be your friend. They're not going to, you don't have to ask them about their lives. They're there to serve you. And I think that can come in a couple different ways, as a mentor, as a therapist, somebody who can provide you that objectivity and hold you accountable. And there's no shame in that. And it's important to make sure that you have folks that you can rely on that are trusted and safe, but make sure they're trusted and safe.
Sara, that's awesome. And just to piggyback off of that, because I think that we're all in a special time right now. And I want to think about networking because clearly we have a lot of time to think. And so the first thing I think about is gratitude. And so I encourage everybody to come up with a gratitude list of all the people in their lives that they're grateful for, and have you ping them and let them know what they've done for you. So I see COVID-19 as one big appreciation party, right? I am thankful, and so going back from high school to college to past colleagues, who are you appreciative for, and getting back in touch with them. And so when I think of COVID-19 networking, that's my first level. The second level is, and I say this often because it's the best advice I got when I was in high school. I had an actuarial executive at an insurance company, and he said, Jason, if you ask for a job, you'll get advice. And if you ask for advice, you'll get a job. And so as you're thinking about what to ask for, there are so many pieces of advice that you can ask others for. And so the second piece I would say to you is go into that situation and that one-on-one conversation with, this person has something to impart to me and I'm dying to know what that is. Give me some advice, please. And that way you are nourishing relationships. And we've all been talking about how people hire people and people hire people they like. Well, people hire people they like that are appreciative. And people hire people that say, wait a minute, you're smart, tell me something. And so those types of things can still be done via Zoom, and even more old school via phone call if you're tired of it. So, and I would say the third piece is that people are available. Now that people aren't traveling, I am getting in touch with executives that used to be up in the air like George Clooney, and now they're home. And so people that, would take me years to get a hold of, I was talking to one executive, Jason, I'm sorry, for the last year, I was in Germany every third week. Now I'm home. And so think of not only the people that you know, but ooh, it would be great to talk to so-and-so, and go for it. So.
Yeah, LinkedIn chat is good. Like I've just been reaching out to people on LinkedIn chat, and I completely agree, Jason. People are looking for connection. And when you come in an authentic way where you actually are saying, I make a list of anytime someone gets a job or a new role, if you go out of your way to send a private note that's not the LinkedIn AI, people remember that. And if you are genuinely trying to bolster others and help others, people remember that. And yes, if you ask for advice and you are humble to say, wow, I really have enjoyed your path, I'm really interested, can you tell me something about that? People love to give advice. They just do. It's our nature. And this is a great time of goodwill that you can build upon. And it doesn't have to be awkward where you're trying to look just out for yourself. I love that. That was a really great way to put it.
And on that note, I think that obviously all that goodwill reaching out can ultimately lead to some sort of referral. And I wanted Renee, Lynn, or Vonya to talk a little bit about, referrals, because I think sometimes people feel like, oh, well, it doesn't really matter. I don't want to bug somebody. I don't, and tell us a little bit, and I'll start with you, Vonya. Tell us a little bit about how do referrals actually make an impact within Cox? I mean, do they work?
Yeah, such a great question. And actually, last week I was just looking at some recruitment data for Cox, and over 50% of our hires are referral. And for context, we hire thousands of employees each year. So we rely heavily on referrals. And from a talent management, meaning the actual recruiters who are doing the job, they are measured on not just filling the jobs, that's certainly important, but they're also measured on the quantity or quality rather of the hire. So it is just as important, if not more important, that who we're bringing into the company matches the values, the expectations that the hiring managers has, as well as the recruiter, his or herself. And in addition, we're also looking for return on investment. So we track with those hires, their productivity at certain points in time. Did they make it past a year, 2 years, 3 years? We look at all of that as a track record of success for the talent management team and also for the hiring manager. So I would say for now more than ever, utilizing your network, getting those referrals in is absolutely, speaking for Cox, the most probable way that folks are going to get hired in a company. It just, the numbers tell the story.
And And Renee, I mean, any insights from you? Because of course you're in the executive area, and I'm sure a lot of it is referral based.
A lot of it is, and I would say a couple things. You know, number one, it's the referrals carry a lot of weight 90% of the time. There's like those 10% of people who always are going to refer their friends, the same people, you know, who really aren't really right for that job, but they're always like, call Joe, call Susie. And so, you know, but most of the times, I mean, they really do, because these are people we know and trust, and they've worked with these people. So, you know, that gives us that extra level. I mean, we're still going to reference and do all that, but that sort of puts them, if they've got all the skill sets, that kind of puts them a step ahead. And I would say too, that I've also seen it externally. I had someone that was looking at a research position at NBC, and, you know, NBCU has a strong internal recruiting team. So I reached out to a friend there and said, hey, I have someone who's interested in this job. And, you know, we got the interview, and he actually said they told him, because they had, just like Lynn was talking about with hundreds of resumes, they said, you know, his didn't rise to the top just because there were just too many, but they said they interviewed him because of my referral. And they said, had I not referred him, he just never would. And he didn't get the job, but he was one of the finalists. But I think it shows when you know people and they're right and you put in that good word, it definitely makes a difference. But you have to also be careful not to just refer someone because they're your sister or your friend and you're trying to help them out. Like Lynn's shaking her head, Vonya too. But yeah, that's the worst, because then I still have to talk to them, but you know, they're just not right. And it's not good to do that, waste people's time too.
And Lynn, we talked about the importance of the role that recruiters can play within an organization. And, you know, I think it was interesting how we talked about that in some scenarios, you've actually, you know, been like advocating on the behalf of a really strong candidate, but then if a referral comes in through the side door and gets to the hiring manager, sometimes that often takes higher weight too. So I think it's important to point out that sometimes our recruiters are our advocates and they're working with you. But yeah.
Absolutely. So I would say, you know, I can have 5 amazing candidates that meet the qualifications. A few of them get through several stages of the interview process, and one of them is a referral or knows someone at the company, and that could have been secondhand, meaning they didn't actually come as a referral, but someone in the company knows them or worked with them somewhere else. And that immediately makes them rise to the top, because like Vonya was saying, it's, you know, they need to be productive, and being a known quantity is so much better than being an unknown, no matter how great you interview or how great your resume looks. And I will say there have been times, especially since, you know, what I do is pretty niche-y. I recruit the engineering development team in Denver. That's primarily what I do. So I can see where someone has worked. Obviously, as a candidate, I'm reviewing their resume. I see where they worked. And I know that 2.5, 3 years ago, I hired John Smith from that same company. I'm going to say, hey, do you know him? So that happens a lot too. So then I can sort of refer him, right? Where he didn't come in as a referral, but I can find who knows him to help. And a lot of times I will actually get a resume, whether it's somebody who's an applicant or a referral, and look on LinkedIn to see how do I know them and who do I know that knows them, especially as a blind applicant coming into the company. I want to make that connection to show that value or help that person prove their value.
That's great. So we're going to switch gears here, and we're going to do another polling question, because now we want to talk a little bit about the waiting game. And we've all been there. You have applied, you are very eager to get some responses, but in this time of COVID, I think that we're all talking about how do we kind of bring it down? How do we zen out a little bit? Because now you have even more time to focus on, why is this person not following up with me? Why is this person not following up with me? So our next poll question is, how are you managing your stress and uncertainty at this time? And it's important because having been in the roles that I've been for the last 15 years in recruiting and contingent workforce, I think the number one thing that for me rises to the top, and I've heard it time and time again, is how you show up, your passion, your energy, how you show up dictates almost 100% of the time whether you're going to get the job or not. I have seen time and time again that people may not check every box technically, but if you can show up and be energized and show that you really want to be somewhere, that actually makes a huge difference. So it looks like everybody's tabulated in. And no surprise here, of course, our WICT members are amazing. They're planning ahead. They are doing daily exercise and meditation. I'm like, you guys really pick up all the tips that we're giving out during this time. So I realize that I'm the only one I was seeing it. Now you guys can see the actual results. But no, this is important. So we did talk about resiliency and how do you maintain it. You know, I'll throw it out there to anybody on the panel. What are the things that you guys have been doing that you really feel like have had an impact on how do you maintain this resiliency during this time?
Monica, I'm really passionate about mental health, so I just want to say a quick thing about that. One of the ways that, you know, working from home with my husband and not having childcare and all the uncertainty, it's been incredibly stressful, plus just normal life, right? And all companies are trying to do more with less, and you know, there's a lot of stress right now. One of the ways that I've been handling it is I see a therapist, and I try to get everybody to know that I'm trying to normalize that, like that's making me healthy and it's good for me. I meditate and I run, and I make sure that I get a chance to take a step back and take a moment to pause and practice gratitude. One last practical thing I do is every night before I go to bed, there's this technique called GLAD, and you do something that you're grateful for, something that you've learned, something that you've accomplished, and something that delights you. And it helps to kind of put that in perspective. And before I do that, I do my to-do list for the next day. So that's not on my mind. Then I do the GLAD thing. So I'm like, okay, empty the brain, empty the brain with the to-do list, do the GLAD. And that's been really helping me, some of those practical tips, and just having a professional to coach me through.
That's perfect. No, that's great. Anybody else have anything they want to share on that one?
I just think Sara talked about walks, doing your walks before, and that's one of the things that I've been doing with the dog. Just when it gets really stressful and crazy, I just take her out, because that just sort of gives me that moment of zen, and then I'm like, okay. And, you know, when I want to scream or cry or overeat or binge or the world is ending, you know, I think it just kind of calms me down and makes me really enjoy and appreciate life more too.
And Lynn, oh, go ahead. I was going
to say, without being super biased, get a dog. I'm a dog freak. I love my dog just as much as I love my children. And it is that unconditional love that just gets you out of whatever funk, mood, whatever you're in. That I have a dog too, and I walk him, you know, twice a day, a couple miles in the morning, couple miles in the evening. He loves to swim, so we go exploring places to find for him to swim. Just found a new awesome spot, you know, so that's definitely, that's my zen, is my dog. Jackie's not.
One of the other things that we did talk about too was really about some of the faux pas that we're seeing, which is, you know, again, you have this extra time, you're eager to get some level of response, but Vonya, I'll throw it to you. Like, what kind of faux pas do you feel like are out there? And in conjunction with that, it's like, once you have the attention of someone, are people sort of sticking to the norms of like sending thank you letters and doing those things which are important? Because you can either be overly anxious or like let things fall apart, you know, fall by the wayside too. So what are you seeing out there?
Sure. So I'll start with the faux pas question first. I think the biggest faux pas that I've seen is over aggression. When you think about unemployment and where it is, and the number of individuals who are looking for jobs now compared to where we were pre-COVID, the employment relationship has completely done a 360. And so one of the things I tell folks who are, you know, job seekers is be patient, do your due diligence, follow up, but be patient. Understand that a job that may have gotten 200 applications in the past or applicants in the past, they may get 1,000 now. Literally, the world that we live in has changed so dramatically. So exercise patience, do your follow-up. Do your follow-up respectfully though. Don't hound people. If you start sending them an email or a phone call or a text or a LinkedIn post every single day, that is like a turnoff. You gotta be mindful and respectful of your follow-up. But how do you do that? And the question is, if you have the opportunity, and you may not, but if you have the opportunity to even have a phone screen with the recruiter or the hiring manager, just ask them, when can I expect to hear about next steps? What time frame does that look like? So then you kind of have a gauge of, okay, I know it might be a month or two. It's okay. They told me that. So I tell folks, go in asking the question so you kind of are already prepared for either an extended time period, if applicable, or if it is beyond what was conveyed to you, then you know that's your starting point for when to do your follow-up. As it relates to things that I think still resonate that are old school as my kids would tell me at least, thank you notes to me matter. Taking that time to say, I appreciate the information you shared with me, the opportunity to tell my story, share my skills with you, whatever that is, it could be a differentiator. If I'm a hiring manager or a recruiter and I have one or two candidates, what is that one thing that's going to set me aside? It really could be a thank you note, and how that thank you note was written. Was it timely? Back when we were working in offices, was it handwritten or electronic? Now, of course, everything's pretty much going to be electronic, but those small, subtle nuances could really make or break the decisioning factor as relates to, is this person going to move forward in the process or not?
That's perfect. And Jason, like, what do you tell your clients of, like, the pinging, the nudging, that's all really good, but how do you do it in a very tactful and, stylish way?
Vonya hit on some really great points. When we talk about the waiting game, Monica, I think the best song ever written for job seekers was done by Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers. The waiting is the hardest part. And if you go on YouTube, my favorite version of the song is sung with Eddie Vedder. And it's just an inspiring understanding that there is a wait period. There are so many moving pieces, as Vonya was talking about. So you have all these candidates that are applying. They're trying to, and a recruiter's trying to manage this process internally of all these different people that are trying to get input on the hire. So understanding that waiting is the hardest part, and then respecting how you go about it and how you think about time. So Vonya was alluding to, okay, and you've asked the question, all right, when should I hear back? It should be in about 4 to 6 weeks. So then you're emailing that person somewhere between 4 and 6 weeks, and not a moment beforehand. And so that way you're showing respect, and the way that you're doing that is marking your calendar, so that you're constantly looking at your calendar as it relates to your communication. That goes back to the central tracking file I was talking about earlier. So there should be in your tracking file the last date you contacted somebody, so that from a mechanics and tactics perspective, you do not communicate again until there is a reasonable time that you need to reach out. So if they say 4 weeks, you reach out in 4 weeks, and then you wait. And there could be a whole host of things that are going on during this waiting. What other things could you be doing? Sara was talking about meditating and exercising and doing other types of things. You could be reaching out to others. Yes, you want this opportunity, but you can be focusing on other things while you're managing that process. And that's getting your inner Tom Petty and using dates within a tracking file that allows for you to communicate and then stop.
And I think too, you have to remember what Vonya told us. She gave us some insight into how recruiters think. They are selling you internally, and they are putting their brand on the line. they have KPIs that have nothing to do with your skill set and everything to do with your respect level, how you work with others, and they're screening for that emotional intelligence as well. So when you're working with a recruiter and you don't treat them with respect, good luck with that. Because that's one of the things they've given you. Vonya gave us the great insight. It's always important to know, how are people paid? How are they evaluated? How are they compensated? So if they're going to go out and pitch you and put their name on the line, they're not going to do that if they know you. Obviously, that's going to be better for them if there's a connection or referral. If you treat them nicely, if you send a thank you card, this is still, you're selling yourself to them and showing them why they should make the case for you. Just like when you go to get a raise, when people would come to me and say, Sara, I want a raise. It's like, okay, tell me why I should pitch you to my boss to do that. Like, let's go through it. What have you done? So just kind of thinking about their role and what is incenting them to position you, because they are going to make those choices.
And I would also say to that point too, the biggest thing that drives me crazy, and I won't speak for Lynn and Vonya, but is when people circumvent and go around the recruiter. Like within a company, if they haven't heard from you and they go to the hiring manager, or people, I'll turn them off or tell them we're waiting, and they'll call the client directly, and nothing. Like, if people tell me, if they have a relationship with someone and say, hey, Renee, Susan is the hiring manager. She's a friend. I know that where things are, but I'm going to reach out to her just to show my interest. And if you tell me that, you're going to do what you want to do. But when they circumvent you, like you said, because that shows that you don't respect. And that goes to what you're talking about too, like how you're going to treat people within the organization. So although you want that job, it's going to hurt you in the long run too.
Yeah, and I was going to say really quickly to add to that, Renee, it can actually tick off hiring managers. Especially if you are working with a recruiter, they're super busy. They're grateful that we are doing the job for them to find them the person. Like, I've had recently a situation where I just pinged the hiring manager saying, hey, where are we with you just had 3 interviews last week. Where are we with everyone? And let's have a conversation so I can provide feedback. Do I need to cut anybody loose? That sort of thing. And I just got a reply back. Yes, he's been pinging everyone. So he interviewed with 4 or 5 people, and he's actually emailing everyone, which is not the way to go. Cut loose,
Yeah.
So for those of us that do follow the rules, understand everybody's role, and have come prepared and are not falling by the wayside on some good old school norms, so you get to that point where you actually land the interview. So let's talk a little bit about that as we sort of round out our session today. But the virtual platforms are prolific right now. There's, lots of things to consider as you think about virtual interviews. We talked about even just prep here today, like Zoom. People had coats waiting on the back of their chairs in case people showed up, more professional versus more casual. So a lot going on when we talk about virtual environments and different platforms. I'll give you guys a couple more seconds. I think people are still responding. So we'll just 1 or 2 more, and then we will share the results now that I'm learning. So here we go. Some people have actually gone through this experience, but some not yet. And still, we've got our planners out there, which is really great. I'm glad that you guys showed up today to just sort of get a taste and some insights as to how this is working and what it feels like and what you need to be prepared for. So on that note, I think, Lynn, you probably have one of the best stories that we heard about this new environment. So please do share.
Okay. So we are 100% doing video interviewing. And that is both before you actually speak to a person. There's a tool that we are using to have some pre-screening questions. You may be sent several questions, and then you have to answer them on video. And then there is, of course, also that live interaction with the person. That's the actual interview. So this is for the tool that is the pre-screening before you speak to anyone. we had a candidate who the only thing that came through the video response was her testing and setting up her background. And it was kind of funny. You could tell it was like an office sort of spare room, you know, had a desk, but also had a little bit of furniture, not cluttered, really not too bad. But in the backgrounds on a shelf were several bottles of alcohol. And her husband was, I think he was super sweet and telling her she looked great and it was so cute and she did look good and, you know, she had her little jacket on. It was so cute. But then he said, well, maybe we should move that. And they actually removed one bottle, which I thought was hilarious because, well, are you less of a partier because there are 3 bottles and not 4? It was just sort of funny. And so needless to say, also she was testing the technology before she was ready to. So unfortunately, none of her responses to the question came through because you only have a few tries. You literally have like 3 tries. So practice it dry, looking at your own camera of how you look, then you move on and you have a couple of options for test runs and then you go live. So unfortunately, she had pressed the button multiple times while she thought she was just setting up her camera. So double, triple, quadruple check the technology. But before you click any buttons, do your own video looking at yourself and your surroundings, what's behind you, that sort of thing. But the alcohol bottles were just hilarious to me. We were all like, so 3 was okay, but 4 wasn't. It was just funny.
So we have to share this funny moment because when we were doing our prep, Jason did what? He is prepared. It is behind his desk. So
Well, and hold on a second, and just to let everybody know, it's a once a week thing, and that's as far as it goes. But you know, I'm glad that it's there when I need it. So.
no, but it is so true. We have to be so mindful of our spaces, of these new platforms. I know even preparing today for Zoom, we were like, which button do we press, when and where? I mean, it's a lot. I think it's just, you know, we all have to get used to that. So really quickly, we're going to dive into our Q&A here shortly, but I have a really quick lightning round last question for everyone. So if you land that new opportunity, what is the one piece of advice you would give to someone to ensure that nothing falls through the cracks, as we are all distracted these days? So I'll start off with Renee. What is that one solid gold piece of advice you would give someone?
Well, I think the thing I always tell people is to look at when you had the interview and you talked about the job, what were the key metrics that they wanted you to accomplish? And really, you know, whether it's launching a new product, working on the team, and really have all that there so that I know it sounds so simple, but people forget sometimes, you know, and know what your goals are and what you really need to meet and just keep track of that. Because to what Sara said too about getting a raise, people sometimes like forget what their accomplishments are sometimes, and to what Jason said, to keep a track of when you network, also do that with your accomplishments. But I think it's just to really kind of keep what those key priorities are and what you've done to meet them, and that way you're doing your job and anything else above and beyond that. But just keeping track of something. I know it's simplistic, but I think it helps you stay on track.
That's perfect. Lynn, what about you?
So I have to ask a question before I answer the question. You mean once the person lands the job, or?
Yes, once they have an offer.
Okay, once they have an offer.
Yeah.
Stay in touch in those pre-stages, stay in touch with the recruiter to make sure your onboarding goes smoothly. And I say that because right now, I counted in the last 6 weeks alone, just 6 weeks, I made 22 offers. And everyone has gone super smoothly. And that is whether they are getting their equipment shipped, which is less likely. It's more likely that they're doing a drive-by to the location, but there are steps that have to take place beforehand. So I would say just staying in touch with that recruiter, because I'm your person until the day you're hired, then you're HR's person, right? So just making sure things go smoothly, because that's very important. And I've had everything go super smooth. It's been a good transition.
That's perfect. How about Vonya? You had talked about some really interesting ideas too.
Yeah, I will move past getting the offer and actually move to when HR kind of takes over the transition between talent management and HR. So one of the things that I think is really important now more than ever is cultural integration. So without the ability to sit in an office or a cubicle and see your leader or your teammates, it becomes increasingly more challenging, I think, to really understand your role remotely as it relates to the cultural norms that exist within the organization. So how do you integrate? How do you acclimate when you can't literally reach out and touch someone? So I tell folks, ask for a peer leader, buddy, mentor, whatever you want to call it, someone that can be your partner to help you through those first 30, 60, 90 days, whatever that time frame is. Also be very deliberate and intentional about what you need to be successful. So let's just say you're in it the first couple of 2-3 weeks and something isn't resonating. Have the courage, if you want to call it that, to identify, hey, can we take a time out? Can we talk about maybe some of the things that I think aren't necessarily working as well as I would like for it to, and get your insights and your perspective on how we can kind of bridge that gap if it exists. It could be the new hires kind of own paranoia, if you will. And then the last thing I would say is really, if you have the opportunity, set a checklist or kind of realistic expectation of what it is you should accomplish within, your first 30, 60, 90 days. I have found that the new hires actually tend to be, for me, the ones that I'm working with currently, a little bit more aggressive with their ambitions, which is a good thing, than what the hiring manager actually expected. So take the time to just kind of make sure your expectations are in line with the hiring manager, so that you have that kind of collaboration and partnership that is, again, aligned, and you all are kind of working together towards the same goal, and not one that's off kilter.
Monica, it looks like her screen might have frozen. So Jason, why don't we ask you the same thing?
Thanks, Sara. And I'm sure Monica will come back soon. And I love Vonya's points. And, often when you're at that stage where you've gotten the offer and you're about to start, people think about negotiating for all different points of compensation. I'm a big fan of negotiating for negotiations, meaning that you're negotiating for future negotiations with your hiring manager a month out, 3 months out, 6 months out, so that you're guaranteeing structured conversations on your performance and how things are going, so that you're making sure and that you're following up on those types of things. So negotiating for negotiations is such an important piece, because especially in this virtual environment, we need a more structured, and Vonya talks a lot about intentions, and I completely agree, that having these dates in the calendar so that you're able to talk about. So I hear an echo. Oh, okay. Anyway, so negotiate for future negotiations is my last piece of advice.
Sorry, that was me prepared.
we got your back, Monica. We're all,
no, it's fine. I was switching over to phone back to video, so I will not reveal what service provider I have. It is none of the companies that are being represented here today. That is a hint. So on that note, all of our WICT member companies are not involved with that slip up. But so I know Jason, and then we've got Sara. You were next up to kind of give us your advice on that one.
I don't work with that as much, so I'm just gonna share my personal experience. I had a job that I wasn't aligned culturally when I was before I worked at NBO Partners. And I remember when I went into the interview, I really wanted a good fit for both of us. And I wanted to make sure that, well, in a respectful way, that I was deferential and all of that. But I asked, can I understand the management style of the person that I'd be working with? Is it possible to speak to a peer on the team? You said in the job, this is literally what I did. I printed out the job rec. I'm like, you say here that you need me to be detail oriented. You know, I have a concern about that. Sometimes that's not my strength. You know, could we work together on that? And I did it in a way that was respectful to show that I was engaged and wanted to make sure that I was respecting their culture, but also respecting myself. And, you know, sometimes if it's not a good fit, that's okay, right? For both of us, because it's a relationship that you're looking at. And again, you have to respect the recruiter and what they want to do. So maybe you can ask the recruiter, who's your advocate, hey, do you know what this person's style is? Would it be okay for me to ask a question like that in the interview? Or is that frowned upon? Because to Vonya's point, culture is everything. It's everything. And if you come in guns a-blazing and the manager is worried about losing their job or something else that you don't know about, people are messy. Understand the culture and make sure that you are, you know, not swimming against something else that's going on that you may not be privy to.
That's perfect. So I know we were trying to reserve some time for questions at the end, but I feel like we had such a rich conversation. Svetlana, I think we had a couple of questions come in, and I know that we are going to be saving the chat information. So we will look at those questions and be able to answer some of them. I don't know if maybe we have time for one. Svetlana, do you want to pull one of the?
Sure. Thanks, Monica. One question we received is, do all resumes have to be delivered electronically, or is there a value to a tangible, physical, very unique presentation to stand out from the crowd?
LinkedIn works. I think Lynn said that on the chat. Like, I think LinkedIn email is fine with me. It doesn't really, it's not going to change getting something that's pretty or hand. That's really not going to change anything. It's not going to make you any stronger of a candidate. I mean, it's always nice to have a copy, but we can easily print it. And I don't think, you know, electronically works for me. I don't know about you guys.
Yeah, I think in this day and age, you know, no one's going to give you their home address, and
Right.
nobody's checking their mailboxes at the office. So absolutely electronically. And it is okay to say, okay, well, she works there. Let me go look at her profile on LinkedIn and send her a private message. I've had lots of conversations that way, just to tag on to what Renee said. But at this point in time, I don't think a physical resume is the way to go.
Perfect. Well, I will go ahead and hand it over to Jackie, my faithful co-chair in all of this, and also with Svetlana. I just want to personally thank the two of them, because it was a team effort to pull this together, and we are very excited about putting future programming out there. But I'll let Jackie take the floor to close us out today.
All right. Well, first of all, thank you to our amazing panel, and Monica for doing such a great job and structuring the content for this event. I hope all of our participants took away some great valuable tips. We will certainly be sharing actual content with everyone as much as we can. I also want to thank the marketing team for our chapter, who's done an amazing job at quickly getting this event out and on social and in other ways, and spreading the word. So you'll be asked to provide a feedback on this event. So, you know, we rely on the feedback from our event participants in order to help us structure future events. So please make sure that you do complete that survey when you get it. Make sure you visit and follow all of our WICT DC Baltimore social media avenues. We are very active on social, so we want to interact with you as much as possible. And we will be sending a follow-up email to all the participants with content from this event. So thanks again to everyone for all their help and contributions to putting this event together, and for all of the participants who spent time with us today. We look forward to seeing you very soon again.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Have a great afternoon.
All right.
Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.